Greetings, everyone. Do one final check here. Can everybody hear me? Again, just type a Y. Let me know if it's clear. Good. Okay, we're good to start. All right, so thank you all for showing up, and I appreciate you coming. My name is Day Miami in Second Life, Bill Schmachtenberg. I teach high school earth science in Southwest Virginia, and I teach college-level geology and paleontology at Ferrum College, again in Southwest Virginia. And last week I got together with Chantel and Jess, and they were saying about how they didn't have a speaker for this weekend. So I was looking at the dinosaur skeletons, and I thought, gee, that would be cool to talk about that. I'm going to warn all of you that my training is mostly in invertebrate paleontology, but I do also teach about dinosaurs because I think they're really cool. CB, I'm in Southwest Virginia, not West Virginia, although I have been there. So anyway, feel free to contact me. My email address is there, wschmachtenberg@gmail.com. And if you didn't get that, at the very end, remind me, and I'll throw it in local. Tell you the way I roll. I know some lecturers do not like to be interrupted during their presentations. I am not like that at all. If you have a question or comment, I have the nearby local chat open, and feel free to put any comments or questions that you have in here. And I think that's part of the cool part of Second Life, is that we can get this sort of interaction that is going on. And I also encourage you, if you can put your name and affiliation and where you're located, that's always fun to see where people are located. I know where some of you are, obviously. Jess and Chantal, you're the organizers. I know that, but many of you I'm not familiar with. And I wanted to mention today's presentation is in honor of a truly great guy, Robert Matt Poole. A week ago, we got the news that unfortunately Matt had passed away. Some of you may have known him as Cyrus Hush, and I went to his funeral today, and obviously there are many people that are saddened by his loss. Matt was not only a phenomenal educator and professor here in Southwest Virginia, he was also a geologist and was fascinated with science. Like I said, he will be sorely missed. Many of you know him for his tours that he ran on Thursday nights with the ISTE organization, and he was a true pioneer. He will be sorely missed. All right, so I have some, I figured we start off with some basic information, some simple things. And this is a presentation I typically do in my paleontology class. Oh, we got somebody from Germany. Awesome. My ancestors were German. So we're going to start with some basic information. Dinosaurs, of course, lived and defined basically the Mesozoic era that extended from about 64 to 242 million years. Research is continually going on about exactly when the Mesozoic was. I remember when I was in school, it was 64 to 230 million years. And they then extended back further in time with the discovery of dinosaur footprints from about the 240, 242 million years. And Mike, welcome. Love to see people from Illinois. Oh, we have someone from Chicago. That's where I got my PhD from. And we have a New Yorker here. I grew up in upstate New York. Shoreham, let's talk. I know about the Catskills and so on. We've got Italy. Wow, we've got a wide range of people. All right, one of the things that I want to mention is that the biological relationships among dinosaurs is very enigmatic. They were originally thought to be lizards because at the time, in the 1600s, when the first dinosaur bone was found over in England, they just didn't know what they were. So they thought they were big lizards. We now know that that's not true. Most of the recent discoveries of dinosaurs indicate that they have a biologic affinity to primarily birds. There was also some discussion that they may be related to mammals. I think the bird link, especially with some of the carnivorous dinosaurs, is the one that's most compelling. We now know that dinosaurs, like raptors, had feathers. We know they had hollow bones like birds, where they laid eggs. There's Archaeopteryx, which is a great transitional fossil between birds and dinosaurs back in the Jurassic. I think the evidence is overwhelming here that that's what they are related to. One of the things that I also like to point out early in my lecture is that dinosaurs have now been restricted to land-dwelling animals. So if you look around me, and I appreciate Jess and Chantel putting out all these really cool dinosaur models, you see a pterodactyl hovering above me. They were at one time considered dinosaurs, but no more. They've been now thrown into a separate group of the flying reptiles. Similarly, plesiosaurs have also been removed. In other words, animals that swam in the ocean during the Mesozoic have been removed from the Dinosauria and are placed in the swimming reptile group. All right, so I've listed some of the eras in the Mesozoic. Many of us are familiar with the Cretaceous, the very famous Jurassic period, and the Triassic. I'm going to be talking about each of those. You don't see many dinosaurs during the Triassic. They're very simple and small, sort of Comte-looking things. I'll have pictures of these. Nice color images are coming up. Jurassic is the one that's most famous. Most of these Brachiosaurus, Stegosaurus, Apatosaurs, and so on were first discovered in the Jurassic of Wyoming by Othniel Charles Marsh in the 1870s, and that's when the trains started to run. So he had an easy way of moving these big dinosaurs from the Wyoming back to his home near Yale. And then the age in which they're most dominant is the Cretaceous. That's when you get the raptors and horned dinosaurs like Triceratops and T-Rex coming in. Their diversity just explodes in the Cretaceous, and that's going to be important later on as we talk about dinosaur extinction events. All right, this one, I'm sorry, is a little bit, it's black and white, and it's a little hard to read. You may need to cam in order to read it, but I'm going to go through some of these. This one is our first introduction to the different types of dinosaurs. At the very bottom, you see this thing that's looking like a little lizard running along. And he's going to be important. So there weren't many dinosaurs around in the Triassic 240 million years ago when these things first appear on the Earth. And then you get into the Jurassic where you start seeing Stegosaurus, the plated dinosaurs. You start getting into this group called the Sauropods. These are the ones that everybody loves. These are the long-necked, four-legged dinosaurs. And then at the very top of the screen, we see the Cretaceous, where we have armored dinosaurs like ankylosaurs. I remember them as sort of like armadillos that you see down in Texas today. We have the Theropods. These are the ones that everybody loves to hate. These are the carnivorous dinosaurs like T-Rex and raptors. I remember that by thinking, oh, instead of pterosaurs, these are terror dinosaurs, and they certainly must have inspired terror among the other animals that lived around then. No, the pterosaurs, CB, existed all the way from the Triassic right up into the Cretaceous. And there are representatives like T-Rex and raptors in the Cretaceous, and then you've got things like allosaurs going after Stegosaurus and Sauropods in the Jurassic. And then we've got the horned dinosaurs, the Ceratopsians, and then on the upper left are the duck-billed dinosaurs known as orthopods, or the bird-footed dinosaurs. So there are basically 7 groups of dinosaurs that I've just went over briefly, and I hope you were paying attention because there will be a test coming up. I've got a series of slides, and we'll see if you know which ones are which. Let's see if Xylan can do well here. All right. So that's sort of a brief life history of the dinosaurs. All right. This crude image, and I really want you to look at the one that's on the bottom, was taken from a mural on that's on the wall of the American Museum of Natural History. And ideas about dinosaurs have dramatically changed over the years. Again, when the first one was found in the 1860s, well, actually, no, 1600s over in Europe, people didn't know about them. They just assumed they were big lizards. Then as you start getting into the 1800s, we find these bigger dinosaurs. And people started to wonder, well, how do they support their weight? And so paleontologists started to put them in water. And again, looking at the bottom illustration here of these big sauropod or long-necked dinosaurs in a swampy environment, what's wrong with this picture? Why is it that we now think that it's just absurd, okay, to have big four-legged dinosaurs like this? This is the audience participation part of the program. Put anything you can think of in local chat. Yeah, the neck and tail were flexible. That's okay. All right, but I want to know what is that right? Very good, Baragon. Big animals like this are going to sink into the mud and get stuck. Empress is saying they were not all lizards. That's true. The other thing is, some people have even put these things in the water so far that the water extends up to the top of their necks. And there have been studies that have shown where the water pressure would have crushed the esophagus of these dinosaurs. The problem, and I wish you guys could see me in real life here, to get to Empress's comment, they weren't lizards. If you look at a lizard, they have a sort of bent leg anatomy, and that's fine if you're a small little lizard running around. We got plenty of lizards here in Virginia, so I study them all the time. But when you get to be an animal that's 70, 80 feet long, that's just not going to work. You've got to have legs that are like elephant legs, that are very thick. Some of them had 2 femurs to support the weight of the dinosaur. So yeah, you really need an elephant or a rhino sort of anatomy in order for these things to work. All right, let's talk a little bit about the range, the range of these dinosaurs, and this is mostly North America, a little North American reconstruction. As we go through time from the Triassic to the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, we see that parts of North America were flooded. And then as we go through time, we develop mountain ranges along the east and the western side of North America. That's for the Jurassic, I believe. As we go through geologic time even further, the seas start to transgress onto the land. Here's one for the very latest part of the Cretaceous, where the central third of North America was covered with the water all the way from the Arctic right down to the tropics. And I mentioned earlier, this is the time when dinosaurs really take off. I mean, their diversity is almost exponentially increasing, and you can see why. We've got this broad inland sea. Based on the invertebrates, we're pretty sure that they were mostly fresh, pretty much fresh or brackish water. So these animals had plenty of water to drink from. You're near the equator, so it's warm. There's lots of plants for the plant eaters to eat. You got this coastal plain going up and down the North American continent, and there was no ice at the North Pole, so it was a very warm, moderate climate back then. It was just perfect conditions, okay, to start developing all these large animals on the land. All right, so let's talk about the rise of the dinosaurs. And I'm going to give this a minute to res. All right, and what you see here is not a dinosaur. This is actually a labyrinthodon animal, and it was a contemporary, the very first dinosaurs that started to appear in the late Triassic. And you notice its basic morphologic features. Okay, you've got an animal that has tusks. It was probably a very slow-moving organism. I can't imagine. It was probably, well, I imagine it was pretty dim-witted. This was the competition for the first dinosaurs that appear. And I love bringing up this slide to get you guys to think about why were these animals so successful? You know, why is it that they persisted for about, I'd say about 120 million years? What was the secret of their success? And here it is in the next slide. This is one of the first dinosaurs that starts to appear, and he had very slender anatomy. You notice the long legs, the bobbing head, the diminutive tails. That is the secret to the dinosaurs, this bipedal anatomy. They are the first organisms, okay, that that appeared. In fact, just about every dinosaur group has a bipedal anatomy. And CBS, could global warming lead to dinosaurs re-evolve? You mean appearing again? The rule of evolution, unfortunately, is no. When organisms tend to go extinct, that's it. Could global warming trigger new monsters appearing on the Earth? Absolutely. Would they be like dinosaurs? Not necessarily. The rule of evolution is that no, once they're gone, they're gone. Stefano, higher oxygen levels, that's a possibility. Certainly these organisms were larger. People have argued that they had a warm blood anatomy like we do, and maybe they required more oxygen. All right, so take a look at these groups of dinosaurs. And now we get some color images here. And which let's see if you were paying attention. Which of the 7 groups of dinosaurs that I mentioned earlier in the slides do you think this group is? Remember we talked about, very good, these are the duck-billed dinosaurs, known as the hadrosaurs or parasaurs. And I love this slide up here because it shows some of the unusual crests that these animals had. Some of them had a little point that stuck up. Some of them had sort of a semicircular crest. Some of them had this long tube. Some had this bulb on the top of their skull. We're not sure as to why they had this unusual head structure. Right, the Pachycephalosaurus, Aaron, is the one in the front with the long tube. It was hollow, so it's not a defensive mechanism. Most likely, it maybe they ran air through it, and maybe it's a warning to other dinosaurs of a predator that's in the area. Okay. No, these are not Pachycephalosaurs. We're going to talk about them in a minute. All of these are ornithopods or bird-footed dinosaurs. Okay, here's another one showing these parasaurs, perhaps in herds or groups. And we have a Star Wars fan, I see, CB. Okay, here's another shot of these hadrosaurs or bird-footed dinosaurs. These are maiasaurs, and I like throwing this one up to honor the work of Jack Horner in Montana, who studied this group extensively and found out basically that dinosaurs traveled in herds and they took care of their young. That's why he coined them maiasaurs or the mother dinosaurs. All right, so what do you think about this group? This is a little trickier. Which of the groups of dinosaurs do you think you're seeing here? Again, just type an answer in the local chat. And I need to make it multiple choice. Right? No, they're not armored. We haven't got to that group yet. We've got the Theropods, which are the, right, Protoceratops. Right, okay, these are Protoceratops. These are actually the Ceratopsian Dinosaurs, but these are early, quote, horned dinosaurs that have the crest, but they haven't gotten the horns yet. Again, notice the bipedal structure of the one in the front. Again, this is a characteristic of all the dinosaur groups. And here's a nice picture of a Triceratops mother dinosaur protecting her child. I like this one because you can see some of the changes that have occurred, you know, as they go from babies to adults. You see a little bit more ornamentation along the crest, maybe as a result of you know, them becoming more mature, maybe trying to attract mates. Silent has asked about the pterosaurs. I can, as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, pterosaurs are not actually dinosaurs, but sure, if you want to talk about them, we can. I see one on top. Yeah, they did a great job of putting dinosaurs around the sim. All right, here's some more ceratopsian or horned dinosaurs. We see 3 representative of the groups. At the bottom in the front is the monoclonius, single-horned dinosaur with a huge crest. Again, you see some markings along the side. Then there's Triceratops in the middle, and there's the Styracosaurus at the very top with all the horns sticking out. So the number of horns vary greatly. There's been a lot of discussion about the crest and why it was there. Some people have suggested that maybe it was intended to make the dinosaur look larger. In the case of monoclonius, we see that there's a series of bones in the skull, and then the skin is just stretched apart. So maybe the animal didn't want to expend a lot of energy making a huge crest, and just wanted this frill as a way of scaring off opponents. Let's see, our question is, there a species of Ceratops with such long legs? I think the artist got that wrong. Most Ceratopsian dinosaurs were probably short-legged. One of the things, that we can talk about with the crest is maybe it was a thermoregulatory system. I was going to say also, some people suggest that the crests were there as an anchoring point for muscles. Those crests surely must have been heavy, so they would have needed some control, of that. Let's see. Oh, I was going to talk more about the legs. My favorite animal on the planet is the horned rhino. And I always loved Triceratops because I thought that they were somehow related to each other. And so I've asked some experts, and the answer is no, that there's no biological relationship between Triceratops and rhinos. Yeah, I felt the same way, Empress. However, there was a paper published a couple of years ago where they did a study of the anatomy of the rhino and Triceratops and found out that in terms of convergent evolution, these animals were very similar. So even though they weren't biologically related to each other, they functioned the same way. They probably had, their legs were arranged, you can see sort of like a bend in them. And whether you're talking about a rhino or a ceratopsian dinosaur, that sort of bent anatomy, but close to the, the bending is, notice the bending is close to the body, gives them two things: being able to support the weight, and also being able to run fast. And Mike has a question right about plesiosaurs and dolphins. Yeah, I think that's true. If you got questions about plesiosaurs, I'm not the guy. I work with a paleontologist at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, Christina Bird, and she really knows about these things. So if you want to get into that, send me an email and I'll forward it on to her. And she's pretty good about giving me a response quick about plesiosaur questions. Okay, so we've got some more. The success, I think, is due to the bipedal anatomy. Not so sure about neurophysiology. The problem is that we get some soft parts preserved. We can guess based on cranial capacity, the size of the brain, and so on. I'm going to say a little bit more about that. Certainly, we know that as you go through geologic time, dinosaurs got a lot smarter. If you look at Stegosaurus, it had this little pea brain, whereas when you get into the Cretaceous, you're dealing with raptors and Tyrannosaurus, much larger brain capacities compared with the size of the dinosaur. All right, test time. Which type of dinosaur is this? You brought this up before. Go ahead and type it in local chat. Which of the groups of dinosaurs are we looking at here? Well, if you look at the top of the dinosaur, it has a thick skull. Does that give you any hints? Haven's not going to guess again. Somebody brought up before, this is a Pachycephalosaurus, or thick-skulled dinosaur. Some people have suggested maybe they had this thick skull because of they could ram other dinosaurs. Maybe it was like rams, so there was some sort of way of competing for females. A lot of speculation. You look at the color of the skins. We have no idea what color these dinosaurs were. Maybe they were dull colors or green colors to blend in with the landscape. Maybe they were like peacocks, again, to attract members of the opposite sex. That's purely speculative. Going to get to the Stegosaurus question and the two brains in a little while. Hold on to that one, please. All right. Anyone want to guess at this group? These are the armadillo dinosaurs, right? These are the ankylosaurs that were common towards the end of the Cretaceous. And notice all the spines on their backs to protect them from predators. All right, and this one is easy. Hi, science. Right, these are the stegosaurs, and I love this illustration because you see some of the basic anatomy of these dinosaurs. You see the four long spiked tails, the plates running along the back. Those certainly not for some kind of protection. They were hollow. Again, engineers have said that most likely this was a result of sort of some kind of thermal regulation that the dinosaurs maintained. Notice the small head cranial capacity for typical of Jurassic dinosaurs. And yeah, there's been a lot of discussion in the literature about was there a second brain on the back? Maybe, who knows? But a lot of that's been dispelled from what I've read in the literature. We think that there may have been thickening of the neural tissues along the back, and that certainly would have made sense. If you're a big dinosaur like this, you want to be able to effectively communicate with the neural cells along the spine. Because probably the way that this animal defended itself, we know the neck skeleton was very flexible. So the animal, rather than, us as humans, we can only look maybe 90 degrees. These animals could twist their head around 180. So they could look towards the back, and they must have swung that tail in probably some sort of defensive mechanism. All right, and here's an example of what I was talking about, where if the Stegosaurus was, no problems, Island, done that too. If you swing the tail like this, or if you're attacked by a theropod or a carnivorous dinosaur, most likely the defense mechanism would have been to direct the tail at the attacking carnivore and then swing it with the spikes. Must have been a formidable weapon. All right, how about these Ceratopsians? What kind of dinosaur are they? This is sort of an easy one. Well, this is an example of an early form of theropod dinosaur. You can see the meat-eating nature of it. And back in the Triassic, when we're talking about being a meat eater, we're not talking about going after big plant eaters like Triceratops. They're most likely going after birds and insects and that sort of thing. And basically, if you're starving, you'll eat anything. All right. This is a Guano Don, all right, one of the very first dinosaurs ever discovered and described over in England. Again, it was named because back then they really didn't know what a dinosaur was. I mean, early dinosaurs were found, again, without much study. There was a lot of different interpretations. Again, these things were thought be like lizards. The Chinese, when they found dinosaurs, described them to be dragons. That's where the dragon legends are supposed to originate. What's really interesting about iguanodons, if looking again, this is Second Life, so cam in on the hand of that dinosaur, and it looks like there's, in my book, it looks like there's a little node that's forming where our thumb is, and you got to wonder that this is a Cretaceous dinosaur. If these things had persisted, would they have developed opposable thumbs? Now, this is a very speculative area we're getting into here, okay? Because there are some people that say no, that node that is on the hand has nothing to do with an opposable thumb. I've heard other paleontologists said, well, it's interesting its location, because if you start developing an opposable thumb, what does that mean? Plus, pair that with the fact that dinosaurs certainly were getting more intelligent. I mean, basically what it means in my book is that these things were becoming social. You get an opposable thumb, you can start using tools. Dinosaurs, had they not gone extinct, may have gone the same route as sort of human evolution. Yeah, right, Fidget. There are some people who have suggested that. All right, so which group of dinosaurs are we looking at here? These are our sauropods, everybody's favorite. In fact, you see a model, right? Good, Aaron. You see a model of a sauropod in back of the Triceratops models that you see here. These are four-legged dinosaurs, long necks and so on. And if you look in the back of the picture, it shows these animals. You see these animals sort of trying to reach foliage on the very top part of high trees. This was a very common reconstruction, I would say, in the 60s and 70s. Nowadays, we know it just isn't true. The work that's been done on this group has showed that they didn't eat leaves from high foliage. Instead, these things were like cranes, and maybe they would reach deep inside a forest to try and get to the low-lying foliage. But based on the leaves and so on that we find in their stomachs, they were not using them to get to high elevations. Here's another group of the sauropods, the Diplo Dockets. Diplo Dockets get their name from double beams. So these are the dinosaurs that had two femurs, or big thick bones, running along the leg to try and support their weight. We no longer need to, let me go back one slide. We no longer think of dinosaurs as living in swamps. That just is a ridiculous idea. Yeah, good point, Ariane. The blood pressure would have been really hard to get to the top of the neck. We now think that these sauropods probably inhabited upland environments. They probably would have loved Virginia, okay, because there are a lot of pine trees here, which were very common at the time of the dinosaurs that they would have fed on. A lot of the flowering plants came along later in the Cenozoic and the Cretaceous. All right, let's move on. All right, so now we're going to have a little fun. And I asked Jess and Chantel to set up for me a skeleton of a T-Rex. So you can either look at the picture that's on my slide, or better yet, look at the model of the T-Rex that's to my right. That would be to your left. And we're going to do a quick poll here. Just want to see what people think. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Was it a carnivore or a scavenger? Everybody right now in local chat, type in carnivore or scavenger, or both is fine. So Fidget went with carnivore. A lot of you see carnivore, scavenger, both. Fair enough. The reason why I like this question is because it's still being debated in the literature as to which feeding method this animal went after. Okay, so it looks like we've got a mix. I'm seeing about half scavengers and half carnivores, and some people feeling that they were both. So, anybody want to defend their answer? Okay, take a look at the skeleton, because that's basically all we have to work with. And based on features of the skeleton that you see here, defend your answer, scavenger, carnivore, or both. And Berrigan, what's the YouTube? Is that a reconstruction of these guys? Berrigan, did you want us to stop and watch the video? All right, so here's some of the, for later, okay. All right, so here's some of the things that people have commented on. We've already talked about the teeth. Certainly they were very, but again, I think you could argue either way. Either they were used for, for eating prey that was already dead. Here's the problem with being a carnivore. Let's suppose you go after a Triceratops and you bite down on the back of the Triceratops. One of the problems is, one, you can get your teeth stuck. Two, a lot of these dinosaurs had very thick scapular bones. And if you don't know what a scapula is, I want everybody to take their hand, reach behind to your back, and feel your shoulder blades. Okay, in humans, the shoulder blade is the same thing as the scapula. And we have a pretty thick scapula, but dinosaurs would have been even more so. So it would have been tough to go after a prey from the back. Maybe it would have gone for the jugular underneath the neck. That's a possibility. If you look at the huge eyes, the ocular openings in the skull, and they were both arranged on the front of the head, indicating this was a stereoscopic vision. We have stereoscopic vision. It's great for 3D perception. And so if you're attacking prey, you could argue that stereoscopic vision would be a check in that box. Some people have argued, well, wait a minute, what about the small forelimbs on these dinosaurs? What good would they have been? Maybe they were like steak knives. So if you want to argue in terms of scavengers, maybe you would want to do that. Kick your prey. Okay. Some people have argued that that they had a large scapular bone. Maybe that was a muscle attachment a site, and so those forelimbs would have been pretty nasty at slashing at prey. Some people have argued, look at the leg muscles and the length of the legs, and have argued that this thing was a fast runner and probably agile with a counterbalanced tail for the head. And then other people have argued, no, it wasn't a fast runner. The muscles that would have needed to propel an animal of this size would have given it a speed of maybe 10, 15 miles an hour. So people go back and forth. And again, I think if this guy is hungry, he's going to eat anything. Maybe chase it down like a lion and kill it, okay? Or if there's already dead meat in the environment, they'll go after that. If you look at the amount of prey and predators around, there's only 5 T-Rex skeletons that's ever been found. And there's lots of prey in the environment. The difference between a carnivore and scavenger is whether the meat was dead. Right, a carnivore will be like a lion. It actively chases down its prey, whereas a scavenger eats something that's already dead. There was a very interesting study that was just done where they compared the anatomy of a T-Rex with other animals living today, specifically a dog, a cat, and a hyena. So of those 3 animals, again, we have another poll, lots of audience participation. I love doing this in my lecture. Okay, how many of you think the T-Rex was closer to a dog? Well, put down your answer, dog, hyena, or cat. What do you think? We've got one answer. Well, we got another hyena. Dog, don't know. Cat, dog, cat. Okay, if you said dog, congratulations, you're right. If you look at the long snout on the T-Rex, very similar to a dog. My cat, who's sitting right next to me, doesn't look anything like a T-Rex. Very short snout. And people have argued that maybe these things attacked like a dog. So what they would basically do is run after their prey and sink their teeth into it, as opposed to cats. They tend, when they attack their prey, they sink their front claws in first, and then the teeth come later. So they've sort of argued that. All right, so let's talk about other attack mechanisms. It's the Cretaceous, and you're the Ankylosaurus sitting right on this coastal plain, and you got a bunch of raptors that are going after you. The animal is, you're sort of hunkered down, your spines are exposed, you've got this thick outer skeleton and skin. If you're a raptor, how could they go after this prey? No answers? Right, yes. Some people have suggested flip them over, right, Aaron? That's what's been suggested, and the underbelly is the soft part. They might have had to work together, but if you flip them over, then the spines are working against the animal, and it's easier to kill them. Dinosaur eggs. Okay, these were first found by Roy Chapman Andrews in the 1920s over in the Gobi Desert of China, and started to get scientists thinking about how they were preserved. We found more of them on later expeditions by the American Museum. Okay, here's another shot of the Ceratopsian dinosaurs. When the first eggs were found, people thought that they were of these horned dinosaurs. And turned out they were wrong. I mean, here's a reconstruction that is just way off base. These are ornithomimous dinosaurs, and the thinking was that they were going after Triceratops eggs and killing them. And it turned out we had everything backwards. When they took one of these dinosaur eggs and did an MRI on it, they found the dinosaur inside of it was not a Ceratopsian dinosaur. It was one of these ornithomimous dinosaurs. So every once in a while, scientists get things backwards. I mean, you look at Edward Drinker Cope, one of the famous vertebrate paleontologists of the 1800s. He put the head of the dinosaur on the tail of one of the sauropod dinosaurs. So everybody makes mistakes, right? All right, so I've given some background information on dinosaurs. I live in Virginia, and I was fortunate to hear Dr. Robert Weems of the U.S. Geological Survey give a presentation on the latest research of dinosaurs in Virginia. Unfortunately, we don't have skeletons of dinosaurs. Many years ago, we found dinosaur footprints in the northern central part of Virginia in a quarry known as Culpeper. Robert Weems, studying rocks along the coastal plain of Virginia, in rocks that were about 113 million years ago, has found dinosaur footprints from a wide variety of dinosaurs, carnivorous theropods, armored ankylosaurs, the bird-footed ornithopods, and sauropods that got up to 70 feet long. That's sort of weird thinking that we had dinosaurs of that size running around here in Virginia. You don't normally think of the state of Virginia as a dinosaur state like you would Colorado or Wyoming or Montana, and yet we had them. Okay. All right, so what about their extinction? That's a topic that everybody loves to talk about. And here's a slide showing some emancipated dinosaurs that were dying, maybe because their water holes were starting to dry up or was just getting too hot. So that's what I want to get into next, dinosaur extinction ideas. And there have been a couple of ideas that have been proposed about what killed off the dinosaurs. And I like to do this in sort of a two-part process. We've got some people that believe sort of uniformitarian ideas, that dinosaurs basically were no different than other animals that live today. So maybe they just succumbed to disease. We'll get to the asteroid in a minute, Aaron. Maybe what happened was that the supercontinent of Pangaea was splitting apart. And as the supercontinent splits apart, the herds got smaller and smaller. And stupid herding procedure starts to kick in. So what happens is that these smaller herds will start to follow lead dinosaur, and the lead one jumps off a cliff and the rest of them follows. Or maybe Pangaea was coming together. I mean, obviously both of those can't happen. But as the continents collide, diseases spread. Most people think it was the first, that Pangaea was splitting apart. Some people have suggested maybe it was a climate change. We certainly know that the climate was getting warmer. We know that, the climate was getting colder, that water holes were starting to dry up. I showed you a slide earlier of the large epicontinental seaway that extended down the middle of the North American continent. We know today that when water pools start to dry up in Africa, the large mammal populations of elephants and rhinos start to go extinct. And maybe the dinosaurs weren't any different. Okay, they lose their water supply and they're gone. On the other hand, there are the catastrophe ideas. Some people have suggested that magnetic reversals may have doomed the dinosaurs. There doesn't seem to be much evidence. The one that everybody likes to talk to, and local chat is no different, is that there was some kind of impact, a meteor, a comet, or an asteroid struck the Earth towards the end of the reign of dinosaurs, and that's what wiped them out. And this theory was first championed by Walter Alvarez and his team of scientists. They did something very interesting. They studied rare earth elements that were found in a clay layer that was just on top of Mesozoic limestones, in between Mesozoic and Cenozoic limestones. Turned out every time they analyzed the clay layer, they found high levels of iridium and osmium. And we don't hear much about those elements on Earth because they're so rare here on the Earth. But when you look at asteroids and comets, iridium and osmium tend to be very common. So they argue that this was the chemical fingerprint for an asteroid impact event. And we can talk about that in a minute, asteroid impacts. So theory was first proposed in the 1980s. Alvarez's team suggested that you have this massive impact and dust and gases shot up into the atmosphere, and it clogs out the sun, and the plants can't get light for photosynthesis. And then after that, the bird or the plant-eating dinosaurs die out, like Triceratops, and you work your way up the food chain until the meat eaters died out as well. And in the 1980s, what bothered people was they couldn't find the crater. There are a lot of impact craters on the Earth. The problem is that none of the ones that people were looking at were of the right size and the right age. And then finally, in the early 1990s, somebody had a very clever idea. They said, let's look where the clay layer is the thickest, and that was in the Caribbean area. So they intensified their search for the Caribbean, and then finally, in I think it was 1991 or two, somebody found the crater located in between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba, buried under 65 million years of sediment. They use geophysical prospecting techniques very similar to what's used for locating oil finds today. Yeah, it's another thing, satellite debris. We hope a lot of it burns up, but some of it doesn't. All right, so the impacting object, I'll let this rest for a minute, was about 5 kilometers in diameter and created a crater about 75 kilometers. So, like I said, eventually they found the crater located between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. And I think, is that my last slide? Yep. Okay, and I'm doing pretty well on time. I've gone for about 50 minutes here. So if there's some additional questions that you want to talk about, I'll be happy to do so. I'm happy to announce, I don't know, Chantel and Jess, if you've been able to promote this yet, but I was at the Virginia Museum of Natural History this week talking to one of their curators, and I'm happy to announce that Alex Hastings has agreed to give a lecture for the Science Circle on July 30th. I want everybody right now to mark their calendars. His topic is going to be Titanoboa, giant snakes. Yes, it's going to be in Second Life, okay? So anyway, yeah, July 30th, 2016. If you want to hear Alex Hastings speak, you can only hear him on Second Life and Science Circle. And if you're not clear what the connection is, Alex Hastings was on the team of scientists that was the first to find Titanoboa. It was a snake that lived after the age of dinosaurs, got up to about 45 feet long. He was one of the scientists that found the bones of this thing in South America. Yes, he was on Nova. For those of you that have Netflix, there was a documentary done, Titanoboa, and he appeared in the Titanoboa documentary on Netflix. If you want to watch that before his presentation or after, I think I heard him speak first here in Virginia, and then watch the Titanoboa thing second. But take care, Calliope. Thanks for joining us. It's going to be a fascinating lecture, so please attend that one. And with that said, anybody have any questions about dinosaurs? Thank you all for coming. And I promised at the very end that I would put my email back into local chat. So if you think of something, feel free to ask me. Busy making notes about Titanoboa. Yeah. Thanks, Mike, for your comments. Ariana, what's your question? Feel free, if you want the mic. Okay, about the second brain, the thinking among most experts is it was not a second brain. It was an enlargement of the neural nodes along the tail. We don't. We really don't know the color of the skin. You rarely get any skin preserved at all. The only skin that we've found are casts that were found in deserts like of the Sahara. Most of the time we just get the bones. So any colors that you saw on the slide were purely speculative. Yeah, Definitely raptors had feathers. I'm not sure if, specifically if Velociraptor had them, but the recent discoveries of the American Museum of Natural History in the Gobi Desert, um, definitely produced raptors with feathers, and again form the evidence that people think that the carnivorous dinosaurs were related to birds. Yep, call her anything you want. Yeah, good question, Empress. Um, I think that's something that people are going to debate about. There's not much when you get the skull of the dinosaur. Obviously, all you have left, all you can measure. What they do is they inject latex in there, and then they pull that out, and they use that to determine the volume of the brain size. Okay, good question. I forgot to talk about Brontosaurus, but since you brought up Aaron, I'll be happy to do so. Okay, back in the 1870s, it was right after the Civil War, there were two very famous vertebrate paleontologists. Their names were Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Coe. Both of them went out west. Both of them were financially well-to-do. They had inherited a lot of money from their ancestors, and they were both interested in getting the largest and baddest dinosaurs they could find. It was a feud that was basically going on. Othniel Charles Marsh had his workers in an area called Como Bluff in southeastern Wyoming, and they found tons of dinosaur bones. They found so many bones of dinosaurs that they couldn't get them out of the ground fast enough and load them on trains going out east. And they were in such a rush that they started naming them quickly. And one of them was a Pachycephalosaurus, and the other was Brontosaurus. And the bones were sent east to Yale University. Years later, what was discovered was that the bones that were used to define Brontosaurus belonged to the same species and maybe the same individual as the Apatosaurus. And in science, the way it works, the animal that is defined first, called the law of primacy, is the one that sticks. So Apatosaurus got in the books first, so that's the one that sticks. Unfortunately, Brontosaurus is not only gone as a dinosaur, it's gone as a name. And yeah, I know you and I, well, I'm 59. When I was growing up, everybody loved Brontosaurus, but unfortunately, it's pretty much out of the books. My son is 22. He was brought up on a Apatosaurus. And Barragan's asking if egg interiors preserved any example of brain structure. Not that I know of, but I'm not an expert on the scans that they've done. But it's a good question. Yeah, what they tend to do is many of the stomach cavities, or somebody brought up coprolites, which are the excretion of dinosaurs. They can look through and they can see like pollen, and try and figure out what kind of, yeah, dino poop. They can try and figure out what these animals basically ate. Thanks, Noel Subset. Thanks for coming. Glad you all enjoyed it. Chantel and Jess, do we have a lecture coming up next week? Glad you all enjoyed it. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm going to log out again. If you have further questions, feel free to contact me by email.